Good evening, everybody. I'm Anna Song, Associate Professor of Music and Chair of the department here at Linfield. It is my pleasure to welcome you, students, faculty, staff, community members, and of course, our special guests for tonight. So welcome to the fourth and final event of Fear No Music's residency with us this spring. These have all been made possible through the Lacroute Arts series. So we are incredibly grateful to Ronnie Lacroute for making all of this possible. So thank you, Ronnie. So tonight we have with us pianist Jeff Payne, whose amazing performance we just heard, composer Quinn Mason, and Natalie Nesheba from Bravo Youth Orchestra. So to start, I'm just going to give a brief intro to each of our guests, and then they'll say hello, and hopefully you can see them. So to start off, pianist Jeff Payne co-founded Fear No Music back in 1992. He has performed with the group across the United States, including concerts in New York City, California, Colorado, and of course, throughout the Pacific Northwest. During his tenure as F&M Artistic Director, he established the Young Composers Workshop as part of Fear No Music's mission. He continues till today as its director, and he oversees the development of aspiring young creative minds across the country. Jeff graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Music from Boston University and holds a Master of Music in Piano from New England Conservatory. He currently teaches at Reed College. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you.
Also with us is composer Quinn Mason, who is also a conductor. He is based in Dallas, Texas, and as a composer, his mission is to compose music for various mediums that are based in traditional Western art music and reflect the times in which we currently live. A recipient of numerous awards and honors from such organizations as the American Composers Forum, Voices of Change, and the Diversity Initiative, he has had works performed by orchestras and ensembles throughout the country. As a conductor, Quinn serves as apprentice conductor of the Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra. He is also an avid and passionate writer, and as you heard Jeff mention during the recital, Quinn maintains his own classical music blog. Hi, Quinn.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then we also have with us, of course, Natalie Nesheba, who is the Woodwinds teaching artist and one of the site directors for Bravo Youth Orchestras, which is an organization in Portland inspired by Venezuela's El Sistema to improve the lives of underserved children through intensive orchestral instruction. Having received a Bachelor of Music in Flute from Central Washington University and a Master of Music in Flute Performance from the University of Northern Iowa, Natalie is an active flutist and enjoys running clinics on creative composition with youth in the Southwestern Washington and Oregon areas. Natalie currently performs with the Portland Columbia Symphony Orchestra. Hi, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me and looking forward to chatting with you, Anna.
Well, it's just exciting to have all three of you here with us to just kind of discuss some of the pertinent issues of today surrounding music and of course the program and the different collaborative elements to Fear No Music's season. So to start, I have a couple questions for Jeff. Jeff, could you share with us how familiar you were with the composers on your program before this project? You know, what was it like to prepare for this recital? How was it different from your other I guess typical recitals maybe that you tended to do? And then I'll ask you another question just about Fear No Music after you tell us about your familiarity with the composers.
Sure. I had heard of Margaret Bonds. I was familiar with her name and a little bit about her biography, but I was not familiar with either Courtney Bryan or Quinn Mason. And Kenji Bunch, the artistic director, suggested the Bryan and the Mason pieces to me. And so I was thrilled to get to hear those and to learn those. So, you know, it's always interesting when you encounter a composer that you've never heard before and there's sort of no, what do you want to call it, performance tradition. You know, when you're learning Chopin or Bach or something, there's a, you know, dozens of recordings to listen to and all sorts of writings about them and stuff. And so in this situation, especially when you've got two living composers, you don't have that. And now on the other hand, we have blogs from composers like Quinn's blog, so I could go on and read about him and listen to his music and to get a sense of where he was coming from in his piece and what it was that inspired him to write this. And so that's always helpful when you're trying to get a handle on a new piece and come up with an interpretation and understand what's going on. So yeah, and the same thing with Courtney Bryant. She has a very extensive website and lots of recordings of her pieces. And so I got to hear a lot of the pieces that both Quinn Mason and Courtney Bryant had done, sort of compare, say, oh, this is how it sort of fits into their overall genre of writing and stuff, and how maybe this is like some other pieces are different. So that really helps in terms of learning a new piece like that by a composer that I'm unfamiliar with.
And then I'm just curious, did you kind of at all communicate with Quinn or have any kind of contact with him prior to the performance, or?
No, I didn't. And now that I've met him online, I really wish I had. I suppose in the future, I'm going to have to make a better effort to reach out and talk to a composer ahead of time. I think maybe I've gotten too used to being in quarantine and not having any contact with people. I probably should have done it, because we chatted just a little bit the other day during our initial contact and stuff. So I hope that there'll be some future contact too.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I think, yeah, whenever, I mean, I know Fear No Music obviously focuses on new music, and so largely composers that are living. But I was just curious if there was any contact there. So turning to Fear No Music, I mean, it's amazing to have, one of the co-founders here with us tonight, as well as the performer for this evening. But could you share with us just kind of about the evolution of Fear No Music since its founding, and kind of your thoughts on this particular season's focus on Black artists, and how you think possibly that being involved in the project has impacted you?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you mentioned, the Fear No Music got started in 1992. Our first concert was in the fall of 1992, which I find hard to believe that we're coming up on 30 years next year. The math doesn't add up, since I'm actually just 39, so I'm not quite sure how that works. But anyway, that aside, from the beginning, Fear No Music has always made it a goal to sort of expand chamber music, the idea of what chamber music is, who creates it, how it's done, who is involved, who listens to it, and stuff. And so I think that over the years, I was sort of thinking back about the things that we've done. We've done concerts with a didgeridoo player, with a theremin player, with a shakuhachi player. I know we've the Portland Taiko, we've done several concerts with them. So incorporating non-classical instruments in our concerts is sort of like expanding the idea of what is chamber music and who comes in and listens to it and creates it. And we've also tried to take a really global approach, I think. We have done several concerts over the years focused on music from Asian composers and Pacific Rim composers. We've done concerts of music from composers from Mexico and different countries. Kenji in particular has put a real focus on music by women composers and stuff. So I think that from the beginning, our goal has been to sort of make the pie bigger, as I hate to quote George Bush, but I think that was his quote, something. And so I think that this season, this year, is an expansion of that and the next step in that. And I know that for me, when I've been listening to the other concerts this year and hearing some amazing music that I'd never heard before by composers I was unfamiliar with, or composers I might have had some passing familiarity with, but just didn't know their pieces in depth. So like everything we've done, I always feel like it's an exploration, and it's sort of what's around the corner that I don't know, that's more interesting than the pieces that I do know. and it's always I wanted to find the next piece to listen to. So I think that in that sense, this season of music by Black Americans is part and parcel of what we've done, and is just opening that world to me, to stuff that I was not familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just what you've just shared. It's amazing. I thought a lot about the name of this ensemble. Fear No Music, and how fear is so much at the root of our tendency as humans, I guess, to kind of stick with the familiar, do what we know. That kind of resistance, I guess, to change in a way, or that challenge, that the thing that kind of prevents us from changing, at least quickly, especially about when things that need to change don't change quickly enough. But that idea of expanding, kind of redefining, and confronting our fears, it's really quite relevant, I think, in terms of everything that we're talking about in terms of race and so many other social issues. So I just find it so pertinent. So Quinn, Jeff did mention a little bit about your piece during the recital, but I wonder if there's anything more you can share with us about the never-ending ocean of identity, and Jeff's rendition.
Sure. So that piece is actually an excerpt from a larger suite called Homage a Lola Perrin. So basically the entire suite of music is inspired by the music of Lola Perrin, who is a pianist composer who is based in London, actually. And her music is pretty much the same as I kind of wrote it. It's very meditative, it's minimalist, and it's basically music that morphs and kind of develops within itself. So having worked with minimalist music before, it was quite enjoyable music to write. And that particular piece is a reworking of one of the movements that I did for an etude project for the Brevard Music Center when I was a composition student there in 2018. And so as you've heard, that piece is very repetitive, but there's a specific direction I intended with that piece of music, especially since it repeats it a lot. And it's for the pianist to kind of look at each bar and kind of bury it dynamically and kind of make wave-like shapes. It's not indicated in the sheet music, but most pianists, Jeff included, have a natural tendency to do that, to give it kind of like a flowing feel to it, almost like an ocean. And the title of that piece is inspired by one of Lola Perrin's titles. Specifically, one of her titles is called The Sea of Names. So sea, and then ocean, and then names, and then identity. So I just put the two together, and I created my own version of that.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, thanks for telling a little bit about the title, because there's something about it that's very that has a lot of mystique, and you're kind of drawn into even just before you hear the piece. But yeah, definitely, I think it's a very appropriate title. I did take a look at your blog, and I read at some point that you write that your music tends to be autobiographical, and that one of your hopes is that that you hope that people who hear your music can relate to the stories that your pieces express. But then you also acknowledge that not many people of color attend orchestral concerts, are kind of connected to the classical music scene. So it struck me, right? So this is very conscious for you. So I wondered if you could expand a bit more on what you meant by that, and how you kind of navigate those thoughts.
Well, that all stems from a life of attending orchestral concerts, specifically, Dallas Symphony Orchestra. I've been going to their concerts since I was like 10. So it's pretty much, I live in the concert hall. And I've just never really, given any thought to, I've never felt unwelcome in the concert hall. Let's just say that. I've always been in there and I've always went for the music. And the reaction I mostly get is people are actually surprised that not many more people like me are in there. Not only young people of color, but young people in general, because, the audiences you find in concert halls are generally aged past 50 or more. So I really didn't give much thought to that until recently. And when I mean recently, I mean about 3 years ago, so not recently. But when I received my first commission from the Dallas Symphony, I wrote my Inner City Rhapsody, which was, that's an autobiographical piece. It's about a composer that comes up in the inner city. And that's not really something you hear in the concert hall, a voice that's represented from that part of classical music. And I just thought about that. It's like, there's not many composers out there who are my age that are writing music autobiographical like this. And that led me to really think about what my role is as a composer and a conductor in the 21st century, especially a composer and conductor of color. And we're getting so many cool opportunities to express our art, like tonight's concert that Kenji Bunch so generously programmed. The entire season, which is focused on Black composers, which is a really underrepresented demographic in classical music, that had me thinking about my role, and especially where I come from. I'm a product of like outreach and educational initiatives and things like that. Like I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if I didn't go to a Dallas Symphony concert as part of a school field trip when I was 10 years old. And that really set off something in my head. It's like the education and getting younger generations interested in classical music starts really young. And that's why recently outreach has been a great part of my mission as a composer and as a conductor as well. One of my upcoming projects is I've recently been appointed composer in residence of the Mesquite Symphony Orchestra for 2 seasons. And one of the main things a new thing that I'm going to bring to the position is an outreach kind of aspect. So we're going to go into the Mesquite ISD schools and we're going to give presentations. We're going to do after school programs. We're going to do composition master classes. And then another thing is cultivating the audience of the present and, demystifying the myth of new music, that all people in all walks of life write new music. So we're going to do things like chamber music series where we're going to feature underrepresented composers. We're going to do pre-concert lectures. And then, since there's a living composer, right here, the dude's right here, I'm going to be there talking to and interacting with the audience. So that's going to bring a real live element to that. But the overall point I'm trying to make is that I see what the problem is, and I have a vision of how I'm going to definitely fix that problem. So
that's amazing. Yeah. You're so young, at least compared to me. But it's so inspiring, and really, as a music educator, it just makes seeing people like you come to this point of then giving back and being the mentor, right? That is so lacking for so many. It just makes everything worthwhile. So it's really great to hear you talk about that. Well, this is a great segue to Natalie, actually. So Natalie, can you kind of, for those of us who are not as familiar with Bravo and what it is and what its mission is, could you kind of give us a little bit of a background of what Bravo is, and then talk about this kind of partnership with Fear No Music during this season and what the goals of that partnership are? I think it's very connected to what we just heard Quinn talk about.
Absolutely. I could have been just saying, yep, doing that. Yep, that's on my top priority list. All of the things Quinn just mentioned are things that we value very highly at Bravo. So our organization is a nonprofit that brings intensive orchestral music instruction to schools that originally had their programs cut. So these are the low-income, high-priority schools where the arts and music was not a priority. And so we brought in this after-school program, and we're promoting self-confidence in students, creating a musical community where children can thrive, find their passions, and just develop into a great North Portland community member. So along with that intensive orchestral instruction that a lot of us have received, we also do a lot of different things. Something that really ties into the Fear No Music connection is that we all who teach at Bravo sort of grew up in the typical classical music pipeline, go to college, go to graduate school, you know, do all of that. And we all felt that although we were performers or getting a performance degree, that the composers had their own thing going on, their own major. These are the real composers. And we were like, hey, these kids have some pretty fantastic ideas. What if we actually listened and we created music based on their legitimate ideas about what they want their own music to sound like? So this is giving autonomy to kids and really letting them harness their musical voice and find it through the act of collectively discussing a theme and making ideas about where we want our project to go together. And I think it kind of stems from the fact that us teachers were bummed out that we didn't get to compose with the composers in college, because now we really want to give children who are classical musicians that opportunity to find their voice of composition. Creativity is just such a huge part of both being a kid and being a musician. And it would be a shame to not listen to the ideas that they have. So this project is giving all these students an opportunity to talk about Nina Simone's song, Tomorrow Is My Turn. We've discussed her lyrics, what they mean to different students in the room, and how we're going to use that to build our own piece, which is in progress.
So then there's a final culminating kind of event of the season for Fear No Music that will, I guess, yeah, coming up later this month, actually. And so the composition that was written by the kids will be on the program, is that?
Yes, so you'll actually see two things. You'll see a video compilation of our creative process. So I've been taking Zoom recordings of all of our virtual classes so that everyone can sort of have an insight as to how we have these conversations. You can hear the kids giving their ideas in real time and how we use them to make a piece together. You'll also see, this is the best part, you'll also see clips of students speaking to Fear No Music musicians and saying, hey, Nancy, I'd like it if you do a descending chromatic scale here. That would be great. Can you record that? Like, coming from a 12-year-old student, it's just really great to be like, you know, bossing around the adults a little bit. It's really fun for them to have that power and control. And that's such another big part of being a musician in a group is here at Bravo, we're kind of trying to take away that power dynamic from the adults and put it in the hands of the students who are, you know, guiding these projects. So it's going to be great. You'll see the creative process video, and then you'll also see our final product, which will be a song response to Tomorrow Is My Turn, featuring Fear No Music musicians.
That's amazing. What an opportunity to, yeah, have such caliber musicians right there to try things out that the students offer. So Jeff, this is pretty similar to kind of the reasons that you established the Young Composers Workshop too. Like, to what extent was kind of increasing access, similar to Bravo?
There's a lot of similarities, and I was so happy to hear Natalie describe this in her description of the kids working with the musicians, because I see this in the Young Composers Project. And for your audience, Young Composers Project is an educational program that Fear No Music runs. We work with kids from 6th through 12th grade who are learning to write music and stuff. Basically what we do is we have a chamber ensemble, 5 professional musicians, in a series of workshops over the year, where they play the pieces that the kids are writing in progress. We play them, we record them, we give them feedback and suggestions to do different ideas, to improve their music. We answer questions about the instruments that they may not be familiar with. How do they orchestrate all 5 instruments, or if they want a certain sound that they're after, something mysterious and spooky, how do they achieve that? And we do this right on the spot with the kids, we record it. And then at the end of the year, after they have workshopped these pieces, we have a concert of all of their finished pieces, which also will be coming up soon. So there's a definite similarity there that, the kids, we're playing their stuff, we're asking them, like, what do you want here? It's not from the top down, it's what do the kids want? How do we help them achieve that? The kids write in all different kinds of styles. We have everything from kids writing, fugues in a classical style or Baroque style, to soundtracks, to jazz, to some free aleatoric scores and stuff. So there's no expectation that the kids write in a certain style or anything, and very open to that. One thing I was going to say, that the creation of Young Composers came about in a slightly different way. But again, it was sort of one of those necessity things. I was asked to judge a composition festival here a number of years ago, and I had to give the kids feedback afterwards and suggestions. And I remember one of the little girls had this piece that was written for a piano, and it had this really beautiful lyrical melody. And I said, oh, that's really wonderful. I said, have you ever thought about having that played on the flute? And she looked at me in that complete honesty that kids have and says, well, I don't have a flute. And, the light bulb went off. I said, well, what if we made it so that she had a flute? And so that was sort of the impetus of, what if we gave these kids that are already composing a chamber ensemble to work with, so that they've got a flute, they've got a clarinet, they've got a violin, they've got percussion or whatever. And it's been an amazing journey in that respect. So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to the Bravo thing. And I was also really thrilled to hear about the work that Quinn is doing with the young audiences and stuff in Dallas. I thought it was fascinating to see here that all 3 of us are really focused on young kids and the next generation, and particularly the creative aspect of it, even more than just, okay, get them into the concert hall and have them listen, but really teaching them how to create their own works. So.
Yeah, that's such a integral way to give them a voice, right? To feel like that they have something to say, and someone is willing to listen. So that's, yeah, definitely so crucial. So I wanted to kind of turn a little bit our conversation towards this issue of race and in classical music. So it's great that we're all talking and focused on kind of, young people and increasing access and exposure on opportunities. I would love to hear from each of you if you have thoughts about, what else needs to be happening? What else can we do? What else is the problem? What else do we need to face? Hopefully, we want to think that these kinds of conversations, Fear No Music season, these residencies, and all of our work with young people are part of that solution. But are there other things that we also need to be actively doing as individuals in our respective kind of spheres?
That's a big question, but I've got a few thoughts on this. One being that one of my goals, and I believe all of my coworkers share this goal, is that we deliver a holistic music experience for the kids. If I'm dropping a kid off after Bravo because they didn't have a ride and they want to listen to their music on the speakers on the way home, it doesn't have to be the music that we play in Bravo. It can be the music that you like to listen to in your free time. It's that experience of combining all of your environmental elements that make you a musician. What I listen to in my free time is not what I play on my flute, is not what I teach, is not what I play in my chamber music. It's all different, but it's all important and it all matters and it all makes you the musician that you are. So I really want to value each of those pieces in each of our kids because it's not the same for any one student, no matter what they look like. Every student's got several elements of this musical, I don't know, cacophony that makes them who they are. So that's just something that I think that we as a society could value a little bit more of.
It sounds like, yeah, you're talking about kind of your identity, right? Your musical identity in a way, as well as, I guess, historically, I don't know if historically is the right word, but there definitely is or has been this sense that, classical music or art music or whatever word you want to use kind of is more, worthy or somehow better. There's like this judgment or this quality, like judging of quality. So I think that's what you're talking about, and I definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt like when I was studying classical music, which I love to play, I didn't immerse myself in classical music culture, and therefore I sort of felt like I was a little bit on the outskirts of the classical music world because I wasn't listening to Mahler when I was going for a run. That's not what was getting me energized, okay? But it's just yeah, it's about valuing your musical identity and how that can change who is showcased and represented if we look at our entire musical being.
Yeah, Quinn, go ahead.
I guess I have a little bit of a short answer for that question you asked. And when I say short answer, I mean one word that immediately springs to mind, and that is the word cultivate. And I say cultivate because, if we think about what happened tonight with Fear No Music, they're cultivating underrepresented voices in classical music, Black voices, by dedicating their entire season to it. That's a great example of cultivating. What Natalie was saying was definitely the cultivating the younger voices and definitely seeing what they're really talented at. And I'm thinking before I'm speaking. That's why I'm taking so long. I'm sorry, but it's seeing what they're good at and then building on that. So then they create a love for something else. The same thing with Jeff, with the young composers, is basically like giving them cool opportunities to kind of experiment with the art, because they may discover that that is where their true musical voice is. So definitely with that word cultivate, makes a huge difference in someone's musical life for sure.
And if, maybe I can jump in there where Quinn left off, because I think cultivate is an ideal word, and I agree with that. I want to add just a little bit to that. What we've been talking about is sort of cultivating young audiences, young composers, young performers, and their worldview. I think it's also important, in my experience, that there are adults, those of us over 50, who are also craving cultivation in a different kind of way. That we realize that what we're hearing in the concert hall, which is always the canon, is limiting, and we hunger to hear, to be cultivated and hear more things. And I think of the example, I've seen this, you know, we listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, everybody gets all, you know, moved and stuff about Beethoven singing about, you know, all men are brothers and, you know, everyone is equal and stuff. And yet you will see the same thing, that if an African-American composer does a piece about equality or freedom, or a woman does something, a piece about equality or something, all of a sudden there is this wall that goes up that says, well, that's sort of a unique to them. And I don't know whether you guys have experienced, but I have seen that in reading about different composers and stuff, or you'll see comments and stuff that the same subject matter is treated differently depending on who is presenting it. And I find that for myself and for a lot of people my age and stuff, consciously working to get around that and say, what is it we need to cultivate to stop that, and to listen to these other voices and treat them as addressing the same issues, simply looking at it from a different point of view. So I'm not sure I have an answer there. It's just sort of a commentary about my frame of mind and the frame of mind of many people my age and stuff, I think.
Well, I think, I mean, I definitely agree. That's, I guess, what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about the name of Fear No Music. You know, ultimately, I mean, maybe on the kind of outside it, it's not so much, maybe initially we're not reacting out of fear, right? It seems like we're just kind of trusting the fact that these pieces have been considered, you know, part of the canon, right? And so I mean, to be blunt, like from ignorance, you kind of think, well, there's a reason that these pieces have, you know, survived the test of time. But when you really dig deeper, you see there's so many other forces at play that have contributed to these specific composers, these specific pieces that have stood the test of time, you know, and at the expense of so many other voices, which just haven't been given the time or the chance to be heard. But there's definitely that resistance, right? And essentially it's a prejudice, I think. It's a resistance. But I think if you dig deeper, it does stem from fear, right? And I mean, we're all human. I think fear is definitely a part of being human. So, you know, I mean, I don't mean to sound kind of judgmental about that, as if I don't have fear, but ultimately I think it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the unfamiliar. It's the unwillingness to let go of some of that. So yeah, I know that it's a tough thing to negotiate that, like, you know, because there's only limited, right? Especially like in a curriculum, right? Like as a chair of a department, I'm thinking, okay, well, what will something has to give us space to allow for these other voices, because you only have so many hours, right? So many concerts. And the same thing goes for, you know, orchestras when they're programming or what have you. But yeah, it takes time to cultivate that. It doesn't happen overnight. And so I guess that's the question that I'm wrestling with. You know, on one level, it's so great that we're having these conversations, and Fear No Music is doing this great thing. And it seems like the conversations are more plentiful now after this summer. And you know, we're all kind of, you know, but then part of me is like, is this just a fad? Is this gonna just kind of die down after a year or two, you know, until the next thing? And so those are the things that I grapple with. And yeah, if anyone has any thoughts to share about that, we'd love to hear.
Well, I was just scrolling Instagram earlier today, and one of my friends posted something that said, change is scary, but so is staying the same. And I feel like that so applies to classical music. If we're scared of programming something new, it's definitely better than programming the same Mozart concerto again. So that's sort of been my inspiration over the last, I don't know, 10 hours since I read that. But I do think it applies, and I think it's a good motto when we're thinking about where we're going to take classical music. as a generation.
And I have to say, I want to refer back to something Quinn said when he was talking about his own life and his experiences, just his, being exposed to the concert hall, as a 10-year-old, and pretty much, I mean, if I heard you correctly, you said you've never felt unwelcome, and I think that's so good to hear. I know that a lot of people, even people who aren't people of color, like just young people, they don't necessarily feel welcome in the classical scene. It's not so much like you're not welcome, but it's this feeling that kind of like it doesn't really, I don't know, feel like I belong here or something like that. There's that kind of air about it. So obviously lots of different organizations are trying to do things, program wise or subscription wise, to draw in new people and young people and things like that. But it's definitely something that gives us thought, like, okay, why is this? And, how can we change that? And ultimately, yeah, music should reflect our identities and who we are. So ultimately it's about education, I guess, right? It's about, again, going back to the Quinn's word of cultivation, and which happens, from a young age. So anyway, we're kind of out of time. So I just want to thank you again, Jeff, Quinn, and Natalie, for being here with us tonight. It's such an honor to spend this time with you. We appreciate the conversation and just, your presence and being able to talk together. So all of these panel discussions have offered us all such an invaluable chance to hear just a variety of perspectives. So, this being the fourth one, on issues of race and access, diversity, reflect upon whose voices have been excluded, and how it all relates to music, which we all love. So hopefully these conversations and together with Fear No Music's programming and having this be them be an ensemble in residence at Linfield, hopefully it all will challenge us to think more deeply about these issues and inspire us to do what we can to change these realities, to be more reflective of what we want and what is just. So though this concludes their residency with us for this semester, again, don't forget to check out their final culminating event, their concert on Monday, April 26th. And there again, you will hear the creative compositions from the students from Bravo, their partnership with Bravo. So yes, check out their details on the website, fearnomusic.org. A very special thanks to each of our guests again, and to Travis, who is behind the scenes again, for all of his tech support. Obviously not possible, any of this, without him. So thank you, Travis. And thank you to all of you out there for tuning in to tonight's panel. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Anna. Bye, everyone.